I just got in, and I'm thinking about obscure vampire movies. Keep in mind, I've seen most of them. On the way home, I was Googling it. Oh, pardon me, my shower likes to randomly take a piss. That's what's happening at this very moment. So I clicked record because I thought about popping on by my local Movie Madness, which is a video rental store here in town. They've got a mugwump. It's a business that has promoted segregation because they employ pseudo-intellectual wet farts who are marching in lockstep and willing to support and perpetuate fascism. But it's the best we got. So I thought about popping by and seeing what they have on hand. It's tempting. I'd rather do so in real life than look online. But I thought I'd mention this because let's say what I have here. They look the same because they are, for the most part, the same. With slight differences. So imagine this is all the wet farts marching in lockstep, promoting whatever they're spoon-fed on the DARPA internet, on social media, in their feed. What most people repeat. That's what's what. Yeah? And that's okay. That flies. People are cool with that. But say a business opened that challenged people to think for themselves. And they didn't put up with that shit. If you wandered in with a facial diaper, this isn't segregation necessarily. Think about it. You could assume that it is. And this is the slippery fucking slope. This is. Because in many ways, it still is segregation. It cuts the other way. One reflects reality, one doesn't. When the overwhelming majority, the moral majority, don't look into things, they buy into things, they support something. And if you look around, everything's fucking horrible and it's going to fucking hell in a handbasket. Which means it's fucking garbage. Which means it's not in place to benefit you and I. People haven't figured that much out. So technically this would be another version of it, unfortunately. If you really, really break it down. Because say this business kicked morons out and told them you're not welcome unless you do something. Now that's the slippery fucking slope, because that's the same as put on a facial diaper, allow a stranger to put a chemical cocktail in your arm, blah, 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 blah. And I need you to think about this. If a business was challenging people to do the right thing, it would go under. It would not last. It would be toast. Because most people want to do what's convenient. A master's got us through entertainment and convenience is my point. Which means the garbage is going to fly. But if you tried to do the right thing, it would probably tank. Because most people are not that bright. In the, the trajectory or, history in terms of humans being on this rock, as far as we're aware, you and I, by and large, have always been slaves. Because a small group of people understand deeper thoughts, deeper things, quote-unquote truths, facts about how this works. And what they spoon feed people is quite the opposite. It's a horrible analogy. But if you actually did the right thing, your business wouldn't last. It would go to shit. People wouldn't hear you out. They wouldn't support you. They wouldn't do the right thing. Because they want to march in lockstep. They want what's convenient. They want to repeat what most people repeat. And these are the kids who claim to be rebels, activists. These are the same kids that will say, put a boot in the neck of a fascist. I forget how they put it. There's a bunch of stickers and this, that, and the other thing. Patches, because there's also propaganda out there. What I mean by propaganda is these are the same kids, by and large, that also bought into communism, which is a shade of fascism. These are the same kids that promote voting, which promotes the Hegelian dialectic, which is a shade of fascism, and a number of other examples. The long story short... When I bark about just how fucking stupid people are, you might be out there watching this video saying, yeah, those kids are fucking dumb. They're dumb. They're so fucking dumb. But what you need to appreciate is you're one of them. You and I are alike. Every single day I have to pull my head out of my ass and try to do the right thing. And most people don't understand what the right thing is because they're repeating this shit. They wouldn't bother considering that stuff. Which is why, I mean, good people willing to do the right thing, free of all the fucking propaganda, have no traction in life, online, in real life, etc., etc. I'm going to tell you a story now. So there's a guy on the side of the street. I think I've recorded a video before. I've shown you him maybe once or twice where I bark at him and I tell him, I'm urging him not to promote the Hegelian dialectic. I've crossed the street. I've bridged the gap, so to speak, this concrete river to, that's a horrible thing to say too, but I've gone to talk to him before. And I've given him a number of things he could, jot down, he could remember, he could look into. And the first time I told him about this, what did he call it? He called it trivia, or he dressed it up as satire. And I told him, these are historical points you can fucking reference and use your brain to prove what I'm saying holds water. In other words, he's promoting the Hegelian dialectic. He's telling people, Trump is bad. Well, the sky is also blue, but the last thing you would do is support a steward of the corporation. Last thing you would do is buy into voting, because that's conquer and divide. That's dividing the masses. That's not beneficial in any form or way. We could use these again if you want a visual aid. I mean, if they're ass to ass, they're being divided, they're moving in the other direction. It's a horrible way to put it, but that's one way to look at this. And what you and I should be doing is coming together and working as one, but people aren't doing that. If we were, you could recognize who's pulling our strings, but most people assume they don't have masters. So this guy didn't want to give me the time of day. And I see him all over the fucking place. We started riding the bus together, and so I pass him, call him a douchebag, is what he thinks. I'd call him a retard. I'd tell him he was a moron. I'd tell him quit polarizing people. I've called him a lot of names. I've never actually called him a douchebag, which makes me laugh. I'll see him at a grocery store, and I'll bark at him in the store and outside the store because I'm keeping up appearances. So the other day, I show up at a bus stop, and it's one of these days where it looks like Portland's going to just dump a torrential downpour on me. But it didn't. Little speckles of rain, but for the most part, you don't get wet. And I'm sitting in the little bus shelter, which I don't always do, but nobody was there, so I was sitting there. But I heard somebody come up. I heard a little bit of rustling and noises, and you can tell when somebody stops and they're waiting for the most part. So I hopped up, looked over, and it's him. So I offered him a seat. I told him, you can have the entire thing if you want, or you can just, sit next to me. It's up to you if you want. And then he was like, no, I'm fine. Da, 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 da. And so we pause, and there's a long pause because, we've been keeping it awkward. I have, by and large. So then he asked me what my name is, and I told him why. Why? Why bother doing that? So then he introduced himself. So I was like, all right. So then I told him my name. So then he said, yeah, usually you call me douchebag. And I told him, correction, usually I call you retard because you're polarizing people. So then we had another long pause. And I told him, do you know what the Hegelian dialectic is? Did you look it up? And he said, yeah, I looked it up. And I was like, so why are you out there polarizing people? And then I used his name. And he said, well, I don't think there's a problem with polarizing people, actually. And I told him, well, why is that? And so I let him go on and on and on. And his big explanation behind all of this is, we need to get Trump out. And I told him, yeah, that's all well and good, but stewards are selected, they're not elected, and that's not going to happen. You and I, as people, can't make that happen. Not using the system. There's some horrible things you could do to a physical body. But what he's doing is never going to change a fucking thing, and all he is doing is promoting the Hegelian dialectic when you simplify it. Blue versus red, conquer and divide, he's dividing the masses. He's reinforcing a phony narrative, a phony jurisdiction. I'm talking about voting. I'm talking about polarizing people. I'm talking about the Hegelian dialectic, which is in place to subjugate the masses. It makes you believe in countries. It makes you believe that America's not a corporation and that you and I actually have a say in things. We don't. We haven't for a very long time. Technically since 1871, for the most part, when America became a corporation. So we continued to have this conversation. He kept trying to dance it back. He tried to talk about the weather. And eventually he started rattling things off like, good God, when's this bus going to get here? Because he was feeling tortured. Because he had to stand there and listen to me. Makes sense. Since he didn't want to, consider. let alone, embody and truly do the right thing, which is also something that I barked about. Point is most people are never going to look into any of this, which is why I told him, you've never written any of these things down. I told him, I have paper on me. I said, I usually won't do this for people, but I will write these things down for you. And he's like, oh, no. And I told him, of course not. People don't want to do the right thing. They want to go along with the flow, repeat the superficial narratives on the superficial surface. And I keep saying superficial because that's what people think they know. That's the propaganda. That's the shit fucking us up. That's why things aren't getting better. Things are getting worse. Because people do not know what they're talking about. And he's one of them. So the reason I waited days to record this video, and I had a better way to put it, and I was going to just record this story for you about this fella. Today I saw him again on the opposite side of the street. He was standing on the corner, polarizing people with a little sign, getting people to honk their horns and believe in this phony jurisdiction because he's dividing the masses. And I'm really kicking the shit out of that dead horse because it's important for you to appreciate this if you see this video, which you probably won't. So when I rode by, I said, quit polarizing people. And I yelled his name because now I know his name. And we both smiled.